Welcome to This is USG, a video podcast by the universities at Shady Grove. 9 universities, 1 campus, great results. I'm M Khademian, the executive director of the universities at Shady Grove. The university at Shady Grove is a very unique place. You've heard me talk about this in our other podcasts as well. One of the really interesting things about Shady Grove is the opportunities for students to develop as leaders, to expand their talents, to try to outreach across a broad audience. And today we have the wonderful opportunity of meeting the crew, the team, who are the producers of 9T at USG. This is a remarkable new podcast that highlights and features the lives of students at Shady Grove, faculty, explores a wide range of things that are happening in our present day and on campus as well. So I'm going to give a brief welcome to our wonderful guests. So first of all, we have Henri Maindidze. Henri, welcome. UMBC psychology major, USG student council member, and VP Psychology Student Association. Henri, welcome. It's great to have you here. We also have Joy Addae, UMB School of Nursing, USG Student Council Vice President. Joy, welcome.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. We have Meghan Ceribo, UMBC psychology major with a certification in human services and secretary of the Psychology Student Association. Meghan, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we have Kaila-Marie McCullough with the University of Maryland College Park's Robert H. Smith School of Business, a marketing major, and USG Mentorps program. So Kaila, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for all of you being here. It's a delight to have you all here, and such an honor to have such accomplished podcasters. So I feel a little bit nervous interviewing such pros. So I'm really happy to have you all here. I'm going to ask you all to take some time to introduce yourselves and to say a little bit about how your time at USG relates to the podcast as well. So Henri, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having us again. And to kind of summarize who I am, I love to create. I've always tried to do that through everything that I've done in my undergrad, and being at USG has kind of given me that space as well. And through like working with the Psychology Student Association and developing 9T and getting to meet with all the other different student organizations here, it's been a wonderful way to see the beauty of this campus and to really kind of immerse myself in everything that it has to offer. And I always enjoy the way that USG has provided a wonderful space for academic excellence and for professional development. And I always try to make sure that other people also have the same opportunities.
That's great. Thank you so much, Henri. Joy, why don't you share a little bit about yourself with us as well?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm such a big fan, so it's such a pleasure being here and just speaking to everyone. So just a little bit about me. My name is Joy, and I attend the University of Maryland studying nursing, like you mentioned in the brief overview of me. So I can officially say that I'm set to graduate in the spring of 21. So I am so excited for that. And also just being the vice president of the student council and a representative of the UMB students. So I basically work with all the cohorts in my nursing program, and it's just such a blessing having to meet just diversities of students. Even those with a second background or a second degree is just such a blessing. And also I'm the co-breakthrough to nursing chair for UMANS, which is the University of Maryland Association of Nursing Students. And so I get to kind of mentor the incoming students. I get to put on events for nursing students to really see the progress, to see them grow. And I think that's what USG is all about. It's about the resources and helping students grow. And so just having to be in a wide variety of learning a bit of everything. While Henri's the creator, I'm more of, I want to get to know as much as I can in the short time that I have at USG. And so I serve with the University Systems of Maryland, the Student Council, I get to work with varieties of students on the different campuses, not just at USG. And I also get to work in the legislative part as a member of the Student Advisory Board. And so I get to see a wide array of everything, as well as be I'm also in the ACES program, so it's Achieving Collegiate of Students in Excellence, and also being a part of the CEO program, getting to really work with people who didn't really have much, who really need that financial need. And so I get to see varieties of just everything. And so just being a part of 9T, we get to kind of pinpoint as much as we can on the various topics that affects people in different ways. And so I'm just a pleasure. It's a pleasure working with Henri as the leader and me as the co-host, even though originally I was like, no, I don't want to do this. But it's really incredible. And USG is just really phenomenal.
Well, you two are a great team on the podcast, I have to say, and we'll get into that a little bit more as we go along, but congratulations on graduation coming up here in 21 as well.
Thank you.
So Kaila, you want to share a little bit about yourself as well?
Sure. Thank you for having all of us. It's honestly a pleasure. 9T, we work so hard to put content out, and I know you definitely do the same. But a background about me, I'm at the University of Maryland, the Robert H. Smith School. I actually come from a family who all attended Shady Grove, which is really awesome because new things always come and go with Shady Grove. I am at the USG's Mentors Program. I'm also at the BMA, which is the Business Management Association. I also am in the Marketing Association, which is really nice. So I'm very heavily involved. And it's been, prior to COVID, it's been really nice to be part of these events. Unfortunately, can't be there in campus, but it's been really nice so far. And I've really enjoyed all the opportunities that USG had to offer while also having it available online.
Terrific. Thank you so much. And Meghan, last but not least, tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship to 9T.
Yeah, sure. Firstly, thank you so much for having us. I think my favorite thing about USG is how personal it is. We see the same faces all the time, and therefore we, create an extraordinary bond with our professors and peers like Joy and Kayla and Henri was saying. That's the best part about USG. I am the secretary for the Psychology Student Association, and part of that is connecting with students and just sharing our love for psychology. And I think that has been a really meaningful part of my time at USG. And I'm really sad to say that I'm graduating as well in May. I don't know who would be sad to graduate, but I am, mainly because I'll really miss seeing all the familiar faces and working on 9T. And I think that 9T has been a really wonderful place for students and faculty to share their experiences at USG.
I couldn't agree with you more. I might have mentioned to you all earlier that I walk every morning, and I've been listening to the 9T podcasts while I walk, and I've learned so much, and I've been so inspired by the topics you take on. Before we go down the path too much about kind of digging into the podcast, I need to ask the question, why 9T? Where did that name come from? And where did the idea come from for 9T? Henri, you want to take a crack at it first?
Yeah, I'd love to. So USG, one of the wonderful things USG has is a community book club. And so they have one each semester. And this past summer, they also had one. And we read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. And it was such a beautiful conversation, especially given all of the civil unrest that we've been going through right now. And it was such a healing space to be in. And amidst that conversation, Laura El Shafei, who was our guest on our 6th episode, The Many Faces of Nursing, actually, made a joke about how it'd be good for me to be on a podcast of some kind. And we all laughed about it. And I laughed about it too, until I sat down and thought, why not make it happen? And the name 9T took about a week to come up with. I remember I was sitting there at about 10 p.m. talking to one of my friends. I initially called them because I needed help coming up with names, but it ended up just being me bouncing ideas off of them. And then 90 came to mind because of firstly the 9 universities. But when you think about sitting over tea historically, right, you're having these conversations with people, these powerful discussions about our lives and what that means for us and where we're going next. And so I really wanted to make sure that there was a space for that at USG. And from there, it was just a matter of reaching out to people, particularly Irish showermen, to help set it up and to find people to help make it a reality as well.
That's fantastic. You really have accomplished that sense of conversation, deep, meaningful conversation. That tone is really established in the podcast. So you've been really successful with that. So Joy, how did you come to be aligned with 9T, and what kind of inspiration do you have? What are you trying to accomplish with 9T?
Yeah, I think that is a great question, because with nursing, our schedule is very hectic. We rarely have time for ourselves. It's all study, and there's little time for any extracurricular activities. And so I always had the idea that I would love to have some type of conversation with people like people in the nursing world who have gone above and beyond in nursing. And so when I thought of that, I had no idea how to even make it work. I thought of a podcast, but I honestly have no idea how to even maneuver through technology. And so having another fellow member of the student council who thought of this great idea, I just reached out to Henri, and it was crazy because before the semester started, I remember telling our president Tiffany that I would love to be friends with Henri. And so him having the idea, I immediately reached out, and I told him, I know I'm going to be busy, but just let me know what I can do to help make this vision come true. And so that's kind of how it worked, and that's how it started. And I must say, it's just been such an honor just working with him, because he has so many great ideas that he likes to see follow through. And so just working alongside him, I think for me, it's been a wake-up call to see that there are areas in which needs to be spoken about, and there are ways that we can go about it. And so with the inspiration of what I would love for 9T to be about is what it already is. And so it's just bringing people who not only have degrees, but also have a lot of knowledge and wisdom that others can learn from, I think has been our greatest accomplishment so far. And so it's been such an incredible journey, and it breaks my heart that it's eventually going to come to an end someday, somehow. But these memories and conversations will go a long way. And so it's been a pleasure being a part of this.
Well, hopefully, you may have a future in this, right? I mean, in whatever the capacity, the technology is there, and these conversations are more important than ever in our lives, in our world. So I hope you keep it up. Kaila, tell me a little bit about why are you drawn to 9T, and what do you take from this experience of working with 9T? How does it enrich your life?
Absolutely. So it's honestly been a pleasure working with them. Henri actually reached out to me at one point in the beginning when he was starting 9T. We met through youth group, but also we met in school. And so basically, as a marketing major, it's very important that I do all social media content. And so social media is one of the biggest things, especially when it comes to launching and showing people the episodes that are being launched out and airing. So it was kind of a calling when Henri reached out to me twice, and I kind of said, you know what, let's do it. I'll go for it. And ever since then, it's honestly been a life-changing, because not only when you said that you go on walks and you listen to 9T, but I also do that to myself. And I really learn a lot about what the students have to say and what the faculty have to say. I mean, I've never met these faculty members, and it's so nice to hear what they have to offer and say what they have to say on 9T. I really get to see a different personality that you don't ever really get to see, which is so nice. And then to also have other students that I've never met personally, and to have this conversation where it's a platform where they feel comfortable is like amazing. It's a gift. And to have Henri as the backbone who really holds this podcast is really nice. And to Joy being there as a support, and then Meghan as well. We are such a great team. I honestly couldn't be so proud of like how far we've come with this podcast.
Well, it's clear you all work incredibly well together. I mean, I think that's one of the keys to the success of this is you also seem to have a lot of fun working together as well. So Meghan, why don't you tell us a bit about your role in 9T and, and what you take from it? How does it, kind of enrich your educational experience?
Sure, yeah. So the thing that I do is I write the questions for 9T's interviewees, and I think that a lot of it comes from how I would like to learn from them and learning about their points of views. I think that really plays a significant role in how I will be in the clinical field, which I want to become a clinical psychologist, so a lot of my education goes into this as well. But some background about how I came onto the team is that Henri and I have worked together in multiple projects. We also used to tutor together at Montgomery College, and I walked into a classroom and he was sitting there and I was like, oh, hey, you're here. And eventually we're kind of just stuck together throughout this whole undergrad. And before I came onto the team, he would kind of run things by a friend and myself, and we kind of see the behind the scenes of it. And I just found that it's incredibly enriching to know what goes on behind the podcast, as well as when you listen to it, you kind of feel how passionate the person who is talking is about the topic. And so when Henri suggested, do you want to become a writer? I was like, yeah, I really do, because you know what, let's report for these people. Let's give these people a platform, give them a voice, and that's incredibly valuable.
So let's pick up on that role, because I tell you, one of the recent ones that I just listened to was on mental health. And I thought what was so great about that podcast was the questions were so good. The questions let people kind of share in a way that was unique to each of their experience. Not everyone, it's difficult for people to talk about mental health. This is one of the topics that you raised in the podcast. It is that it's hard for people to talk about their own mental health and things, but the questions and the format really facilitated that. So I'm wondering if you all could talk a little bit about, how you think about the format, and in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. There's a technical side to this you have to adhere to. There's you've got a guest, you've got to make all these things together, but you also have this wonderful conversation emerge. It feels very free flowing, and I know that takes a lot of work to get there. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how you approach the kind of overall challenge of the podcast. Henri, if you could, you're at the core, at the intersection of all of this, sitting there with the mic. How do you approach all of these things that you have to balance, but still be able to get that wonderful conversation that that someone like myself listening to can learn so much from? How do you approach that, and how do you achieve that wonderful balance?
I think the key of getting that balance is the passion. And Joy, Kayla, and Meghan all hit on that really well. And it's so gratifying to not only have that passion for myself, but also work with people who also share that passion and want to see it grow. And so I think the passion outweighs the challenges that might come across in putting it all together. And it kind of drives it all too. Because I know for me, I have very high standards for the things that I do. And so I know that if we're providing a space for a conversation, that I would want the best space possible to have that conversation. And so I want to make sure that we're providing that for our listeners and for the guests. And I think it's really just kind of, for me, facilitating the work that each of them do, and making sure that we're putting something out that is meaningful and powerful, but also enjoyable, fulfilling in a way. And yeah, I mean, I'd let them talk a little bit more about their own aspects of it.
Yeah, I think describing your role as a facilitator is really interesting. You kind of take yourself out of the center of attention and really shine the spotlight on the people who are there. But that role is so important and it's not easy to do. So that's fantastic. Joy, you can talk a little bit about this as well, but I'm wondering if you can do it in the context of another podcast I recently heard, which was one of the nursing faculty, talking about her international experience, but in this amazing way, talking about how all of her experiences in the international arena and working as an archaeologist, how that informed the way she teaches. And so tell me a little about, I have a feeling you had a lot to do with that podcast. And so I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you approached that and what you wanted to try to get out of that. What was your strategy for thinking about the best way to share her story?
Yeah, so this actually kind of gives me a little goosebumps because she is Laura El-Shafei. Without her, I honestly don't even know what nursing school is. She really kind of showed me the light when I fell into a little cloud of darkness when things got challenging. So I look up to her a lot in terms of teaching. She's such a great advisor. And she's that one person that you can really go to when you really need that success. And so when it came to finding speakers, I immediately thought of her because I knew that what she could bring to the table was beyond my comprehension. And so just like how Henri talked about the passion, I guess for me and my nature, I'm all about the teamwork and the nurturing and the caretaking aspect of it. So I immediately thought of Laura in the sense that I would like for her to speak about what she's been doing as a nurse, because I knew her background. I knew she worked in Algeria and in Nigeria, and she, worked in refugee camps, and she's done a lot in terms of nursing that some people are just so narrow-minded when it comes to nursing, but there's so many things you can do in the field of nursing. And so I wanted to shed the light on the various aspect of, you can be an entrepreneur, you can definitely be, you can own your own company or your own like nursing or hospital if you wanted to. And I think it touched my heart because just like how Laura did her international piece, for me, I would love to be Doctors Without Borders. I would love to work in that arena, because there are a lot of communities that are in need that don't have that medical care. There are people that are starving and dying, and there's so many people in poverty. And it's like, I wanted to shed the light that, those are the people that we need to really cater for. We need to think above and beyond and not just within our community. And so she was just phenomenal, and I just had to have her speak to the audience regardless. And so, with the teamwork that I was speaking on in terms of this podcast, I love that we're also diverse. You have psychology, you have various different things. And so having to really see how everyone works together just really makes this podcast flourish, beautifully. And it's just so beautiful to be a part of it.
Well, one of the things I learned from that, she talked about interprofessional and interdisciplinary education, but she also talked about how people with just different experiences bring so much to the table, and that everyone, so she talked about healthcare workers coming from different countries that may not have as much technology, but how the healthcare workers have learned to be much more in tune with their patients physically and with their body. And I just thought that was a really interesting takeaway. And it reminds me a lot of, I just feel like you all have, you benefit from these very different experiences and you all bring them to the table. Kayla, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, with the social media, how do you approach that? You want to reach a broad audience. This is an amazing effort. How do you think about the social media challenge and, reaching as many people as you can and keeping the flavor that is 9T as well?
Absolutely. So one thing I definitely look at are the analytics. I think that's very important. We want to know the age ranges, the genders, what kind of devices they're looking at. I think that's very important for us, but also the time zones on like where, what's important, with the listeners, is it in the morning, is it during the day, is it at night? Everyone has their own preference, but also when it comes to uploading and creating that flyer and just that logo itself, you want to have it like eye capturing, but also not to a point where it's just draining for someone to look at. They'll see it and then move on to the next. I try to make things very aesthetically pleasing. Of course, like I'll go with Henri and then I'll send it to the group and we all kind of agree and see what needs to be fixed. But in terms of that, it's very important because, you know, social media is such a huge aspect in our lives. We use it every single day. We're always on it, where it's always like accessible. So being able to have the ability to use that, it's very hard to post content and know what people want. So we try to do in a way where it's something that we like and we're very proud of, but also something that people are willing to take some time to listen or to even see. So I try to make it as aesthetically pleasing, but also very clean and sleek, and just make sure that the information I'm gathering is valuable and it's enough for us to kind of work around to know when is a great time to upload and when is not a great time to upload. But I also have my own podcast too, so I kind of think of myself as a third party listener. So I try to make critiques the best I can and tell Henri what can and cannot be fixed. But I also learn by doing my own podcast and incorporate it here so that we can try and get enough viewers and a lot of followers. And because I'm also in a lot of like group related stuff at University of Shady Grove, I definitely try and you know, tell other people like, listen to it, it's really interesting, you think you'll like it. So just, you know, word of mouth, always doing something new.
That's great. I mean, the look of the social media is spot on. It is so good. It's really terrific. So you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. Meghan, talk to us a little bit about your writing process. So, you know, you had this wonderful invitation from Henri. Would you like to write? So how do you approach it? And, you know, you think about the guests, what you want to answer, what to get out of it. What's that process like for writing those questions and developing the content?
I think the first thing that I do is I kind of look at who we're going to be talking to, and I kind of imagine how it would be talking to them on my own, like in a random, regular, casual conversation. And then I also think about how Henri would like to approach the conversation. Henri has a beautiful way of articulating, and everybody says, Henri, you should be on NPR, and that is the truth. And so I kind of imagine like the three of us plus Joy, of course, on in a table and kind of envisioning what they would like to talk about. And knowing the background of the individual also really helps, because I would like for them to be forced to kind of highlight their success and, you know, what they would like to talk about. But honestly, 100% the flow of the conversation and the questions itself is only, like you say, extraordinary because of the person that is being interviewed, the way that they handle the questions, the way that, you know, their thought process of being hit with these hard questions immediately, you know, you can really tell where the passion lays when they're invited onto the podcast. And the last thing is I also think about how diverse the 90 podcast has been so far, and we've touched on a lot of different topics. And so the broader it is, the easier it is for the interviewee and Henri and Joy to kind of narrow it down and, you know, create this beautiful episode with a lot of information in it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great. So I wonder, you know, you all are very busy people. You all are working on your degree, working on your own podcast. In addition to this, you know, you have a lot of things going on. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you balance this. You know, I don't think there's a single student at USG who has free time. I think everybody is very, very busy because you're so interested in so many things and you're working very hard on your degree and all of that. I wonder, Henri, could you share with us a little bit, how do you balance everything? This podcast is very successful, and I imagine what I hear from all of you is it takes a lot of time. It's a lot of thought. It's a lot of effort to produce. So where do you find the energy to do it, and how do you balance this with all your other responsibilities, your schoolwork and maybe job and other things as well?
I think For me, I always try to make sure everything I do has some sort of purpose, some sort of meaning behind it, and something that will help me grow as a person. And so I don't even see 90 as a weight on my shoulders, if that makes sense. I see it as a big responsibility, right, to bring this conversation to the USG community, especially because I have to sit there and edit the audio and go through and take out all the wonderful little bits of conversation that we all have, but I don't see it as a burden in that way. I see 90 as my separation in a way, and I want to go to graduate school for industrial organizational psychology. I'm currently applying to programs for that, and it's a wonderful view into the way that organizations operate, right? Especially higher education organizations, and seeing how the things that an organization is doing are being taken in by its employees, by its customers. In this case, being the students, faculty, and staff at USG. Um, and so I see it as a wonderful opportunity to provide everyone with a space to understand that. And Dr. Khademian, you mentioned earlier how you've taken that for yourself as a part of your own routine. And I feel like that reflects some of the success that we've had, as well as some of the work that we'd like to do as well.
That is a wonderful way to think about it. And I'm so happy to hear you're thinking about IO, industrial organization programs, graduate programs. I hope you all think about graduate programs. Think about USG graduate programs. You don't have to leave. You can continue in graduate programs at USG, but that's a wonderful way to think about it. And the purposefulness of it, that really resonates with me as well, Henri. That's fantastic. Joy, why don't you share a little bit about how you manage all of this in your life?
Yeah, so I think it stems from growing up because I grew up with a wedding planner slash pastor slash hairdresser slash. So I grew up with an aunt who did a lot of stuff, and she was my caretaker for a while before I immigrated to the United States. And so what I learned from her was always having a plan, always being a planner. And so with the busy life that I have, I additionally work at a hospital. And so with the surge in COVID and them needing a lot of nurses and a lot of nursing students to take a lot of role when it comes to caring for others, it all stems from planning. And so I have maybe 3 or 4 planners, to be honest. And because everything is so strategic in the sense that it has to come together very beautifully for this podcast to work, we all time when we're going to reach out and when we're going to speak with these people and when things are due. And so having that has been like one of our successes in making this work. And so, I mean, we're going to continue with that routine, like Henri mentioned, flawlessly. But that's how I've been feeling sane in this, with this semester and with this podcast. And yeah, it's been a blessing to have planners. I hope it never goes away. Even with technology, I'm still going to have a writing planner.
That's awesome. That's great. It's so interesting to hear about your multifaceted aunt who does so much work as well. That's fantastic. That's great. What a great role model. Kaila, why don't you share with us how you balance everything with your work in the marketing program and your other podcast as well? What does that look like for you?
Absolutely. So, kind of what Henri said, I think of this more as just like an opportunity. I mean, being able to have the opportunity to work on the social media aspect of it, but also it's more of like a hands-on experience for me. But I also can like apply to this in my everyday lifestyle and even for just my future jobs and take on to any challenges. I definitely think the check-ins that we do as a team is so helpful because this is kind of like our break from the podcast, but also to be able to catch up and see what's needed for the next couple weeks or what we have planned in the for future episodes. So we're not bombarded with just no ideas coming up in the future. It's really nice to have this outline of what are we going to do, what dates, or just approximately. It doesn't have to be specific, but at least we have something that we can look forward to. And I think that's one thing I love about this podcast itself, is because we have ideas constantly flowing, and we know what we want, and we're so similar in such different ways, and we're able to incorporate that and be able to make a podcast that's just well off for everyone who listens to it. Like, it doesn't even have to be like anyone that's even affiliated with USG. Like, I had my parents listen to it, and they're just like, it's amazing. The mental health, they had no idea students felt this way, and it's just so nice to know that other people besides USG can listen to it. So it's been a fun quote unquote job, but really it's just an opportunity that we all can apply in our lives in the future.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's terrific. Meghan, I'll let you have the last word on this. Tell us a little bit about how you balance your academics and the work on this podcast as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely not glamorous. I will say that there is a lot of frustration and crying involved, but eventually I get there. I think it also stems from like how I was raised. I was raised by a single mother, and a lot of our ideals and values are based on hard work and, you know, achieving things that you would like to achieve. And I'm very, very, very lucky to be working in a program that I genuinely you know, love. I love psychology. I work for a lab at the moment. I also have an internship at a private practice. And I also work at a grocery store, and I do customer service there. And that also plays into everything that I'm doing for school. And I'm also planning a wedding at the moment, so a lot of it is kind of like crashing down on me. But at the same time, when I look at the bigger picture, I just know that all of this is worth it every step of the way. And the podcast is a wonderful outlet. I love to write questions for this podcast because it lets me not think about, you know, the technicality of my program. I'm thinking about other people, who they are, and, you know, their backgrounds. So it's a great outlet.
That's great. I just see all of you bring this wonderful interconnectivity to everything you're doing, so that instead of seeing these things as all separate pieces in your life, you see the threads and connections between all of them. And that's what I think makes your podcast so special as well. I have to tell you, this has been such a treat to be able to talk with all of you. I really feel I'm in the presence of, you know, not only doing great things now, but I hope to see your work in this, or at least elevating these kinds of conversations, whatever form that takes. I hope we continue to do that, because it's so important. It's meant so much to me listening, and I know it means a lot to other people across the USG community. So thank you all for taking the time to talk with us today, and I wish you the very best. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.